This is my award-winning pecan pie cheesecake, the one I used to sell at the farmer's market and the one people still beg for every Thanksgiving. My husband brings it to every military station we move to, and now is the dessert that his co-workers request for every potluck and gathering. It is creamy, it is simple, and it's truly the best of the best. Let me show you how to make it. Before I share all the steps in making this cheesecake, I want to give you a few helpful tips. Anytime you make a cheesecake, you want to make sure that all your ingredients are at room temperature. This way, you won't end up with lumpy cream cheese and curdled batter. You always use paddle attachment and never use whisk attachment. The whisk attachment will add too much air to your batter, and that will result in your cheesecake rising during baking and then falling during cooling process. And that can be one of the culprits for having a cracked cheesecake. When it's time to add eggs, and that's usually the very last ingredient that I try to add to my batter, I always reduce the speed, and you want to mix it just until eggs are incorporated. If you overmix your eggs, you'll add too much air into your batter, which will also cause your cheesecake to crack. Now, when you let your cheesecake cool, you want to turn off the oven and you want to crack the door. And this is important. You also want to know your family members what you're doing. I don't want this to happen to you because when I was making this cheesecake, my husband was originally outside on the farm, so he did not know that what I was making. And when the cheesecake was cooling off, I went outside to plant some plants. And in the meantime, my husband came home for lunch. He saw the door of my oven open, thinking that maybe kids were messing with it. So he pushed it to close it. And so my cheesecake ended up cooling with closed door, resulting in my top of my cheesecake just getting a little bit toastier than I would have wanted. And final tip is you always want to make sure that you chill your cheesecake before serving it. That means that you cannot make and serve cheesecake on the same day. So if I make it one day, I let it chill in the fridge overnight and only serve it the following day. I start out with preheating my oven at 325. I have seen quite a few recipes where it calls for 350 preheating, but honestly, I believe in cooking it low and slow, and 325 is like a sweet spot. It has always worked for me. You want to fill oven-safe dish about halfway with water and place it on the lowest rack, and that will keep humidity inside the oven as cheesecake bakes, and it also will help prevent your cheesecake from cracking. You want to line the bottom of 9-inch springform pan with a parchment paper and set it aside. Then you want to crush graham crackers into crumbs, and in about a medium bowl, combine crumbs with melted butter and brown sugar and stir it until moistened. Then you just want to press the mixture evenly into the bottom and about halfway up the sides of your springform and set it aside. Next, I move on to making pecan pie filling, and let me pause it here for a second. I'll be honest with you, I'm not big on classic pecan pie. But this cheesecake, y'all, this is something else entirely. It's special, it's memorable, and it wins everyone over. So if you like me and do not like traditional pecan pie, you still have to give this cheesecake a shot.
This is gonna be so good.
In a medium saucepan, you want to combine sugar, corn syrup, eggs, melted butter, pecans, and vanilla. You want to mix all the ingredients well and then bring the mixture to a boil over medium heat and simmer. And you want to make sure to constantly stir until the filling thickens, and that takes about 5 to 6 minutes. You will also see that the mixture color will change from pale brown to dark golden brown. Next, you want to pour the mixture into prepared crust and then set it aside. Now we're gonna go over the steps on how to make the cheesecake filling. In the bowl of a standard mixer, you want to make sure that it is fitted with a paddle attachment, and you want to combine cream cheese, brown sugar, and flour. Again, remember, all your ingredients must be room temperature. You want to beat everything on a medium speed until completely smooth, and you want to stop and scrape down the bowl and attachment as needed. And this is done to ensure that the mixture is smooth and not lumpy. Next, you want to add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour and make sure that it's mixed in with the batter. And then you want to slow down the speed, and you want to add your heavy cream and vanilla. Finally, during the very last step, you want to add your eggs. I usually crack my eggs into a separate bowl, and then I use fork and whisk everything together to kind of break up the yolk. Then when I add it to the batter, it doesn't take that long to incorporate, because remember, as we talked, that the more I mix it, once I add the eggs, it adds the air, and with the air, your cheesecake can rise during baking and then fall flat during cooling time, and also it gives the possibility of your cheesecake cracking. For your last step, you just want to pour cheesecake mixture over your pecan pie filling and then place the cheesecake pan on the baking sheet and carefully transfer it to the center rack of the oven. Once I put my cheesecake in the oven, I set the timer to an hour and I walk away. You do not want to constantly open the oven to check on your cheesecake, because with uneven temperatures, it will cause your cheesecake to crack. As you can see, there are a lot of scenarios that can cause your cheesecake to crack, but the best part about cheesecake, they're very forgiving. It's so easy to cover up the crack, and we'll talk about that later. Cheesecake is usually baked for about an hour and 15 minutes. So at an hour mark, I open the door and quickly place aluminum foil on top, and that is to prevent extra browning on the top of your cheesecake. Then you continue to bake for another 15 minutes, and you know when your cheesecake is done when you open up and you can shake your pan just a little bit, and the sides of your cheesecake are set, but the middle still jiggles. Once your cheesecake is done cooking, you want to turn off the oven and leave the cheesecake in the oven with the door slightly open. You want your cheesecake to completely cool inside your oven. If you remove your cheesecake while it's still hot and set it on the counter to cool, the difference in temperature from it being in hot oven and then being removed and put to room temperature will cause your cheesecake to crack. I think the next cheesecake video I'm going to make, it will be titled 10 Sure Ways to Cause Your Cheesecake to Crack. Once the cheesecake has come to room temperature, you want to cover the top of the pan with plastic wrap and transfer it overnight to the fridge. And then in the morning, you run a knife around the edge of the cheesecake and release it from the pan. And you want to decorate however you would like. As for me, somebody who bakes for a living, I always said that I am not a cake decorator, but I am a good baker. And so for me, I like to keep my decorating as simple as possible. So when I sold this cheesecake during Thanksgiving in the past, I would just decorate it with homemade whipped cream and caramel sauce on top. And for homemade whipped cream, it's so easy. You just want to make sure you want to take very cold, heavy whipping cream. And I use 2 cups of that and about half a cup of sugar. And then using whisk attachment, you want to beat the mixture until soft peaks are formed. I use some of the whipped cream to cover the base of the cheesecake. This is why I think cheesecake is the most forgiving kind of cake, because if you have a crack, you can cover it up and nobody would know. Then I drizzle a little bit of caramel over my cheesecake just to kind of spice it up and make it look pretty. Then use the rest of the whipped cream to decorate the borders of the cheesecake. Can I share with you a little story about this pecan pie cheesecake? When my husband was stationed in Florida, he had a coworker that didn't have his family with him. So my husband asked if I would make this pecan pie cheesecake for this guy's birthday. So I told my husband absolutely. So that evening, my husband receives a text from this guy. As he was celebrating his birthday, he cut the pecan pie cheesecake, and a room full of grown men went dead quiet except for a bunch of oh wow reactions, and they all said that it was the best cheesecake they've ever had. This is also the cheesecake that my best friend, whose birthday is in April, requests from me every year to make it for her birthday. So when I say this cheesecake is something else, I truly mean it. All right, y'all, and that's my pecan pie cheesecake, the one that follows us from duty station to duty station and never makes it home with leftovers. If you give it a try this Thanksgiving, let me know how it turns out. And come back this Friday when I will be sharing my favorite Southern side dishes for Thanksgiving. You don't want to miss it. See you on the next